Hey, what's going on? This is Nick LS, and today we're talking about the hardest task for a beginner rider. In my opinion, the hardest task is figuring out the clutch. For me, this was definitely a struggle and a pain point. When I say figuring out the clutch, I simply mean clutch control, and I'm more specifically talking about letting the bike take off. From when you kick down into first and fighting through that friction zone to try and let the clutch grab. It is extremely easy to let out that clutch too fast and completely kill the bike, which was something that I was doing a lot in combination not giving enough throttle, or any throttle for that matter, when I first started riding about 1 year ago today at the MSF course. Riding a motorcycle is tricky as it is and requires a lot of skill, but to even get to the point of where you're riding it takes a lot of skill too. Just starting it up and go ahead and get going. And that was my first impression, because before the MSF course I had never rode a motorcycle. And as some of you may know, the bikes at the MSF course aren't necessarily the best. They have a lot of worn out clutches and there could be older bikes, so I was struggling then for sure. This was definitely the hardest concept for me to grasp, even more so than shifting, even given I had never drove a manual vehicle either. But this was a point for me where I was the absolute worst person in my class that first hour or two during the day. One of our first exercises was just to let out the clutch and basically just kind of doggy paddle to the other side of the parking lot. And I couldn't get to the other side of the parking lot. I don't know what it was. I just couldn't. I was so bad at it. I was basically at the starting line when everybody else was waiting at me at the finish line. And it got to the point where I actually was recommended to just try a completely different motorcycle, because the one I was on, I just wasn't getting it. Switch bikes. Ironically, I was on a sport bike and I switched to an enduro. And that one, I still struggled tremendously, but that one was a little bit easier than the sport bike. I eventually did make it to the end of the parking lot with a lot of encouragement and nearly tripling the allotted time, but hey, I made it work. With all of the bikes that I used at the MSF course, you had to give throttle. And something that is awesome, and the reason why the Ninja 400 is such a perfect beginner bike and has been very suitable for myself, is because you don't necessarily have to give it throttle when you're letting out that clutch. It is so easy to ride. The only reason you would give it throttle is if you're going uphill, otherwise it doesn't need it. Right now, today, I do give throttle as I'm going, just because I like to accelerate faster, which is still something I'm working on. But just the fact that you don't have to rely on anything else just besides slowly letting out that clutch and letting it catch, that is something that is very beneficial. So I just want to reiterate, if you are someone who is new to riding, or maybe tried to ride a motorcycle but couldn't necessarily figure it out as far as killing the bike, don't worry. I was in your shoes, and it just takes time and practice, and eventually it will become second nature. At the end of the MSF course, you have to take the riding test portion, where you test your riding skills. Basically, you put together all of everything you've learned and you test, and that is one piece of getting your license. That was the number one thing that I was concerned about on that test, was not killing the bike. I believe you get up to 3 times to kill the bike, and then if you go over that, you fail. So something that I always did, and I got lucky that I was put last in line to test for the skills. I think it was like a group of about 10 people. I always went last for testing for each skill. What I did at the back of the line was I slowly let out that clutch and I let it move through the friction zone and catch and go into gear. That's something I did repeatedly over and over in practice right before each skill, and proved to be beneficial, because the entire test I did not kill the bike and I let the bike go through the friction zone smoothly every time. Now that I'm 1 year into riding, I don't even think about killing the bike. That's not something that that's not something that I keep in the back of my mind, like, oh, am I gonna kill it from a standstill? No, it's second nature, and I have no problems controlling my bike. There will be those times where you accidentally kill it. You don't realize, your kickstand is down, and you try and kick down into first, and oh, there it goes. That's about the only time I'll ever kill my bike. And for some of you, this may not even be a huge deal. You may get on the bike and understand the friction zone right away. Maybe you have some experience driving a manual car, and maybe some other things come into play, like slow speed maneuvers. I know that is also something that can trip beginners up. What I'm trying to get at here is that everybody has a stumbling point, and that's just something that you're going to have to work through. And with practice, you can accomplish it, and it will eventually become second nature. Just thinking back to a year ago now, there is no way I thought I would be as far as I am in my riding and hit a lot of different milestones that I have. Yet alone, even riding on a public road was something that was a stretch of the imagination. Just to wrap things up, if you're a beginner or just starting out riding motorcycles, just take your time. Don't worry about it. Trust me, you'll get it. It just takes practice and repetition, as does anything. If you enjoyed this video or learned anything new, please hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and a comment down below. I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.